Good morning, family. I'm pleased to announce that Armageddon didn't start last night. If you've been following the news, the president issued an ultimatum to Iran that if they didn't open up the strait for business, that he was going to bomb them into the Stone Age, that he was going to destroy their civilization, and that they need to pull their head out their ass. And a lot of people speculated that if they didn't meet that timeline, that what they meant, because they've been bombing them anyway, right? What they thought they meant was, sorry, they over here running people over today. What people speculated that to mean was that they were going to ultimately use a nuclear weapon, because obviously this administration is unhinged. This administration is out of control. And I know a lot of people want to point fingers like, well, people voted for this. I didn't vote for anybody. I don't believe in the voting system, as y'all know about me. But I see a lot of finger pointing for the people who are saying MAGA this, MAGA that. Y'all voted for this, and look how close we are to Armageddon. But I would argue that nobody voted for this, especially considering that he ran on a platform of no new wars. But yeah, here we are. Iran, they're bombing them, they're bombing bridges, they're talking about bombing power plants. So what the Iranian government did was they issued an edict to the citizenry that if you guys want to protect this crucial infrastructure, create a human barrier around it. Y'all gather, and for protest, to protest the American empire, y'all get around those power plants, stand on those bridges, and it's life or death, right? So the Iranian people took up the challenge and said, okay. And as of yesterday night, by the time the deadline was there were millions of Iranians surrounding those critical points of infrastructure. So at the end of the day, the president had to back down. Had to. Why? Because what would it look like bombing a power plant full of civilians? You have no leg to stand on once you do something like that, right? So by the time the deadline hit, he put out another Truth Social post or tweet or whatever you want to call it to say, oh, I'm going to give them 2 weeks to get their act together. Okay. You're bluffing, brother. You're bluffing. See, a month ago, the Strait of Hormuz was open before y'all started this campaign. Now they're using the excuse that since the Strait of Hormuz is closed to us, that Iran is committing economic warfare. But we're the ones that started this as a preemptive defensive strike, if y'all remember, because they're gonna get nuclear weapons within the next 2 weeks if we don't do something. We've been hearing about this for 40 years. Donald Trump was dumb enough to take the bait, and he went over there and started bombing that country. Worst political mistake he could have ever made, because he put himself in a quagmire. And that the strait being close to us affects us heavily, a lot more than it affects Iran, a lot more than it even affects our allies. Our allies don't even want to allow our planes to fly over their countries right now. They want nothing to do with this, our allies, because this particular president has isolated us from the rest of the world. He is firing generals, he's firing admirals. I think he just fired the second head of the army because people don't want to follow ridiculous orders like dropping nuclear weapons. You see, if anybody decides to do that, I don't care who you are, you're going to prison. President, anybody complacent in doing such a egregious thing is going to jail. There's no getting out of that. That is a war crime. You can't bomb civilian populations because your feelings are hurt, or because you made a bad strategic move because you don't know the way that the game is played. You think that the Game of Thrones is played like the game of business, and it's not. These are two different things. You can bomb people, but people's spirit is deeper than just the flesh. And people like Donald Trump and people that come for money, they don't understand that. They don't understand that sometimes people are willing to die on principle. And not because they're brainwashed, and not because, oh, they're under some dictatorship or anything like that, but no, on the principle that you're gonna come over here, you're gonna bomb our country into submission, and then y'all gonna make us, y'all wanna install some puppet government like y'all do everywhere else, so y'all can put all of this commerce around and pervert our population? Hell no. How about y'all go home? And one of the pieces of vernacular that they use a lot that I hate, and I'm talking about from our government, is they often say, oh, we're over there fighting the bad guys, the bad guys. Well, aren't the bad guys the people that invade your home? Those are bad guys, right? If people were over here, let's say the Iranians came over here and started bombing critical infrastructure, bridges, fucking power plants, all because we have a nuclear program, because we do, right? And then they started putting troops over here, or they started trying to put 4 operating bases so that they can invade. Wouldn't they be the bad guys to us? So when we say, oh, we have to stop the bad guys, how are you stopping people defending? How are they the bad guys when they're over there defending their country? We're the bad guys, we're the invaders. We have no business being over there. Oh, they have a nuclear program. So does a lot of other people. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna make a nuclear bomb. And this type of propaganda that they've been feeding us since the Cold War doesn't necessarily work no more. It's trite, it's lazy. You understand? We understand that it's brainwashing at this point. I know y'all on my regular route. I'm on my regular route. But when you get on the internet, or when you get into a public forum and you represent the American people, and you start saying stuff like, okay, we're gonna end your civilization, that's the problem. Now you definitely sound like the quote unquote bad guys. We are the quote unquote bad guys. And when you start sitting up there saying you're gonna wipe out a civilization that has existed since 3000 BC, you sound crazy as hell. I'm gonna have to get out of here because it's too much music, it's too much music, there's too much music, la 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 la. La, 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 la. But yeah, you sound crazy. So even a lot of his people, the people that were staunch Trump supporters, the people that backed him up, the people that ran campaigns and all that for him, they're even saying this is a field too far. We can't do what, this is unhinged, because it is. And when you have like people like Pete Hegseth in your ear, a disgrace, a person who has blocked the nominations, not the nominations, but the promotions of multiple one-star generals simply because of their race, because that's what it is. Going out of your way to interfere with military protocol because you feel like you're the biggest man in the room is nasty work, and that's who y'all listening to. Y'all are firing y'all most experienced commanders in a time when you will need their knowledge, their wisdom and experience to get you through this. You're firing them because they're giving you the answers that you don't want to hear. You're weak. You're weak. You're weak up and down. You're lucky to have men and women in your ear telling you no if they're there, but you're making them all resign. You're making them all step down. That's a problem. Purging the military to get sycophants in their place who would just say yes to anything that you do is ridiculous. It hurts the country further. It ain't like we ain't hurting already. You know? But you sit there and you start purging our best and brightest. Those people didn't ascend to those positions just because they, you know, these men, when y'all sit there and say, oh, we're the strongest and we project the strongest, it's because of the minds and experience of the generals and admirals and colonels, and of course the enlisted men obviously wants to make the moves happen. But I'm saying, without a lot of that shit is that you I don't know, bro. He gotta go, bro. You can't threaten a whole civilization and then have a leg to stand on. Nobody is supporting us now. Nobody is with us now. You understand? And I know y'all think we can fight the world alone because we pay so much out the, what's up? How you doing? We pay so much out the ass as far as like military and all that shit. But you can't fight the world alone. That's impossible. I don't care what they tell you. I don't care what the brainwashing tells you. I don't care. We can't do it on our own. We can't. And when we sit here and we change the Department of Defense to something called the Department of War, which to me I feel like is a more apt title, because all we do is make war. What are we defending at this point? We make war. That's what they do, right? But when you get to this point and you have like everybody on the planet side-eyeing you, everybody on the planet, even people who have typically, you know, let despots run their country, and people that we used to think were, oh, third world barbarians, this and that, are looking at us, side-eyeing us as an empire, and that's what we are. And when you get online and you start talking about, I'm going to eliminate, if you don't answer to our demands by this time tomorrow, we're going to eliminate your entire civilization. And I don't want to do it, but it's probably gonna happen because you guys are not doing what that's evil. Like, what are we talking about? We're not talking about military targets now. We're not talking about clerics or nothing like that. We're talking about literally fucking the civilian population. They're targeting fucking, what's it called? Distillation plants. Those are the places that clean the water and stuff, right? They're targeting power plants, they're targeting bridges. These are stuff that people use. These ain't just military assets. We go because they're launching here and they're launching there. We shouldn't be over there. And to remind y'all, this has never had the approval of Congress. Congress never said, oh, this is okay. There's never been a vote on us even being over there in the first fucking place. Spending $3 billion a day from what I'm hearing, okay? And when you supposedly have the most powerful military on the planet, it means nothing when you're spending trillions of dollars on equipment, but they're blowing that equipment up with $500, $600 drones. That doesn't make any sense. That's not sustainable financially, economically. You go broke. Empires go broke doing dumb shit like that. Empires go broke trying to sustain war like that. You know? And that's where we at. And we let people like Donald Trump get into office to do whatever the fuck it is he's doing now, right? Because he's been tricked. That's what it is. This man has been tricked, and he knows he's been tricked, and he's trying to weasel his way out of the fact that he's been tricked into a fucking war. He's dumb, and it's ridiculous. And when you start threatening people through tweets and shit, like, it's time to go. And I don't know if y'all have seen the mixtapes coming out of fucking Iran, but they're hilarious and they're kind of catchy. I kid you not. Mixtapes about the war. Mixtapes. Lego mixtapes. Lego people, they have whole, like, rap songs talking about what's going on over there, talking about the crash, talking about us coming over there, talking about pilots missing, all of that shit. And the shit is catchy. It's catchy as hell, right? But it's so dystopian to live in a time where you're like, okay, we're on the cusp of World War III, right? We're pretty much in it, right? And we getting Lego mixtapes of the conflict as one of the most accurate sources of news, because our news ain't telling us every goddamn thing. And also, this president is also threatening members of the press who are telling information like how many pilots went down. Oh, that's classified information, when in reality, no, nobody classified it. You just thought you're embarrassed that X, Y, and Z is happening. And then they're saying, okay, yeah, we rescued the pilot, and yeah, we blew up a couple, we blew up a couple planes because we didn't want them getting those military assets. But that don't matter. The pilot was rescued. But why are y'all that deep? Why are y'all that deep inside Iran? You feel me? Why are y'all there? Don't make no sense. So with that being said, y'all, I have to comment on this. I think it is time to impeach this guy because he doesn't represent us. And I do mean most of us here in this country. Most of us here in this country, unless you some fucked up boomer. Most of us in this country, we don't want no goddamn war. We don't buy or prescribe or subscribe to the notion of going over there and playing world police. That ain't something that we feel like doing. And what happened was us playing world police over here in this hemisphere with the whole Venezuela thing is what gave Donald Trump the confidence to think that Iran was going to be a 24-hour deal. These are two different places, bro. You have one country being run by practically a mob boss, and you have another country that has a history that goes back centuries. you have a tradition that goes back centuries. So when you sit up there and say, oh, we're gonna cut off the head of the snake and the country's gonna fall apart, that's not how that works in some places. Not everybody's gonna bend the knee. Not everybody's gonna look at you as the liberator. Not everybody wants us in their business, bro. And I don't mean that as far as like civilians and shit. Not everybody wants that. So with that being said, y'all, I'm headed back to the crib. I'll catch y'all next time. Bye-bye.